The holographic display flickered with a malevolent beauty. XR7 burned like an infected wound against the pristine star charts of the Grand Symposium Hall. 17 expeditions, 17 highly advanced exploration teams from the most sophisticated species in the known galaxy, all reduced to atomic dust, scattered memories, and increasingly desperate research logs. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood perfectly still, her olive skin a stark contrast to the pale, translucent alien surrounding her. She wore the simple gray uniform of the Terran Xenobiological Research Corps. No medals, no decorations, just a simple patch depicting Earth, and the words, "Adapt, Survive, Understand." Her hand rested casually on a battered datapad, its surface scarred with what looked like burn marks, geological samples, and what might have been emergency circuit repairs done with what appeared to be standard kitchen implements. The Galactic Exploration Consortium had gathered representatives from 63 distinct spacefaring civilizations. The Krellnax delegation occupied the central platform, their crystalline body structures refracting light in intricate patterns that typically signaled extreme emotional states. Today, those patterns suggested a combination of horror and incredulity. The planet designated XR7 represents the most hostile known environment in explored space. Droned Archival Coordinator Zegzalath, their voice a series of clicks and subsonic vibrations, translated by advanced linguistic matrices. Multiple spectral analyses confirmed total biological incompatibility. Atmospheric composition includes 17 separate compounds toxic to carbon-based life. Gravitational variance alone would crush standard titanium alloy exoskeletons within 0.3 standard minutes of surface contact. Belina raised an eyebrow. The chamber fell silent. Zegzalath continued, pulling up holographic data that danced with deadly mathematical precision. Survival probability charts showed endless red zones. Thermal maps revealed temperature fluctuations that would vaporize most known materials. Radiation levels made Chernobyl look like a mild summer day. "I'll go," Elena said. The translation matrix seemed to stutter, as if the words themselves were impossible. High Coordinator Relpak of the Voroxian Exploration Directorate actually laughed, a harsh, mechanical sound that suggested more computational processing than genuine humor. "Human female. Your species has not yet achieved third-tier galactic exploration status. XR7 has consumed teams from civilizations thousands of years more advanced than yours." Elena didn't move, didn't blink. "I'm aware," she responded. The datapad in her hand flickered to life. A rapid montage began. Images of her previous expeditions, volcanic research in Indonesia, deep-sea exploration in the Mariana Trench, a 6-month study of radiation zones around Chernobyl. Each image seemed to deliberately contradict the conventional wisdom of survival. Her doctoral thesis materialized, a 700-page document that had been simultaneously celebrated and condemned by academic boards across 3 continents. Its title alone was a challenge. Adaptation as Evolutionary Aggression, Biological Strategies for Extreme Environment Penetration. The Krellnax delegation's light patterns began to pulse rapidly, a sign of extreme psychological stress. "You cannot be serious," muttered the Voroxian representative. Elena's smile was something between a predator's grin and a mathematician solving a particularly elegant problem. "Serious enough to have already prepared my personal exploration module. My team has been developing adaptive technologies specifically designed for XR7's parameters for the past 18 months. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. 17 failed expeditions, 17 teams of the most advanced biological entities in the known galaxy, reduced to statistical footnotes and cautionary tales. And here stood one human, volunteering to walk into what every other species considered an absolute death sentence. The Grand Symposium of Galactic Exploration would never be the same. The psychological evaluation was supposed to be a formality, a bureaucratic exercise to definitively prove Dr. Elena Rodriguez was clinically insane. Instead, it became a descent into scientific legend. The Galactic Psychological Assessment Team, a multi-species committee representing the most advanced neurological experts in known space, assembled their most comprehensive investigation protocols. They began with standard procedural scans, neural mapping, stress response analysis, risk assessment matrices. What they discovered was anything but standard. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's complete file read like an impossible compilation of survival miracles. Her first major expedition came at age 23, a solo research mission into the heart of the Danakil Depression in Ethiopia, a region so hostile that local geological surveys classified it as essentially uninhabitable. Most scientific teams used remote drones and satellite imaging. Elena spent 3 months living directly in the environment, developing real-time adaptation strategies for extreme thermal and chemical stress. The medical records were a testament to human resilience. Radiation exposure levels that should have been fatal, chemical contamination that would have killed most biological entities, thermal shock that defied conventional survival parameters. Yet she emerged not just alive, but with groundbreaking research that revolutionized understanding of biological adaptation. Her doctoral thesis was a masterpiece of scientific audacity. Adaptation as Evolutionary Aggression wasn't just an academic paper, it was a manifesto. She proposed that human survival wasn't about passive resistance, but active environmental engagement. Where other species saw hostile environments as threats, humans saw complex systems to be understood and potentially manipulated. The Voroxian neural analysts spent 72 consecutive hours attempting to deconstruct her psychological profile. Their advanced computational matrices struggled to categorize her thought patterns. She didn't just think outside the box, she seemed unaware that boxes existed. One particularly senior Krelnax psychostructural analyst noted in their confidential report, "Subject displays cognitive patterns that suggest either extraordinary evolutionary adaptation or a fundamental break from traditional survival logic." Recommendation: further study required. The most compelling evidence came from her previous extreme environment research. A detailed reconstruction showed her methodologies. In the radioactive zones of Chernobyl, she didn't just collect data. She developed a symbiotic research approach with the local microbiological ecosystems. Her team discovered entire chains of radiation-resistant bacterial colonies that could potentially be used for environmental restoration. During her 6-month deep-sea research in the Mariana Trench, she custom-built research equipment using materials sourced directly from the extreme pressure environment. When standard titanium alloy sensors failed, she engineered replacements using local mineral compositions. Her Titan methane hurricane expedition became the stuff of scientific legend. Not only did she survive, but she returned with comprehensive atmospheric interaction data that challenged fundamental understanding of planetary environmental systems. The Psychological Assessment Team's final report was a masterpiece of bureaucratic confusion. They couldn't definitively prove she was sane. Equally, they couldn't prove she was insane. She existed in a quantum state of scientific possibility. Chief Coordinator Relpak reviewed the report, her mechanical components cycling through multiple computational scenarios. The human wasn't just a candidate for the XR-7 mission. She was potentially the only candidate who could even conceptualize surviving it. Buried in the final recommendation was a statement that would echo through galactic scientific circles. Dr. Elena Rodriguez represents a statistical anomaly, not just as an individual, but potentially as a representative of her entire species. Recommendation: full mission authorization with minimal restrictive protocols. The underestimation was complete. Humanity's greatest strength was about to be unleashed, not through military might, but through scientific audacity. The moment Elena's landing module breached XR-7's atmosphere, the planet declared war. Corrosive plasma storms lashed against the module's exterior with gravitational forces that would have instantly crushed any known exploration vessel. The atmospheric composition was less an environment and more a living weapon. 17 distinct compound layers that shifted and mutated with predatory intelligence. Elena's first action wasn't panic. It was calculation. Her fingers danced across a custom-built interface that looked like it had been cobbled together from salvaged military hardware, laboratory equipment, and what appeared to be repurposed kitchen appliances. Holographic displays flickered with real-time data streams, each window a fractional second away from total system failure. "Interesting," she muttered, the only word recorded in the mission's initial log. The landing module's standard defensive systems were failing within seconds. Radiation levels spiked beyond any previously recorded measurements. Thermal variations created microscopic fractures in the hull's most advanced composite materials. Any other species would have initiated emergency evacuation protocols. Alina was recalibrating. She pulled a small device from a hidden compartment, a quantum adaptive material processor that looked more like a modified 3D printer than advanced scientific equipment. Lines of code scrolled faster than most biological eyes could track, rewriting the module's entire defensive strategy in real time. XR7 wasn't just trying to kill her. It was testing her. The planet's environmental systems were complex beyond any previous understanding. What appeared to be random destructive forces were actually intricate, responsive mechanisms. Each attack was a probe, searching for weakness, measuring resistance. Alina understood something the previous 17 expeditions had missed. This wasn't just an environment. It was a living system with its own form of intelligence. Her first transmission back to the Galactic Exploration Consortium was a masterpiece of scientific understatement. Initial contact successful. Environmental parameters more complex than previous spectral analysis suggested. Developing real-time adaptive protocols. The translation matrix in the consortium's communication hub nearly overloaded. Their most advanced sensors showed her module not just surviving, but beginning to interface with the planetary environment in ways that defied current scientific understanding. Within the first hour, Alina had neutralized 63% of the atmospheric toxicity, developed a partial electromagnetic interference countermeasure, begun mapping microscopic environmental interaction networks, collected initial samples from regions previously considered molecularly impossible to sample. Her protective suit was a marvel of improvised engineering. Where standard exploration gear would have disintegrated, her suit seemed to be learning, adapting, changing its molecular structure in real time. It wasn't just protecting her, it was communicating with the environment. Zexalath, watching from the consortium's primary research station, could only emit a series of subsonic vibrations that roughly translated to total incomprehension. "This is impossible," the archival coordinator stated. But on XR7, Dr. Alina Rodriguez was proving that impossible was just a failure of imagination. The planet had consumed 17 of the galaxy's most advanced exploration teams. It was about to meet its first human. 48 hours into the mission, Dr. Alina Rodriguez discovered that XR7 was not a planet. It was a puzzle waiting to be solved. The quantum-entangled bioskin interface she'd spent 18 months developing was more than just scientific equipment. It was a translation device for an entirely new form of planetary communication. Where previous expeditions saw only hostility, Alina was beginning to perceive complex systems of interaction that defied every known model of planetary ecology. Her breakthrough came at 300 hours, local planetary time, a moment that would be marked in scientific archives as the Rodriguez inflection point. The interface wasn't just scanning. It was listening. Microscopic data streams revealed intricate networks of molecular communication that made Earth's most complex ecosystems look like primitive child's play. XR7 wasn't just a hostile environment. It was a living, breathing computational system with layers of complexity that suggested something between organic life and advanced artificial intelligence. Alina's research module, a hybrid of cutting-edge technology and improvisational engineering, began to map something unprecedented. Each molecular interaction was a potential communication channel. The planet's defensive mechanisms weren't random. They were a language. "My God," she whispered, "it's talking to me." The Galactic Exploration Consortium, received her preliminary report with a mixture of scientific excitement and profound terror. Her data streams suggested that XR7 was not just a planet, but potentially a single, massive planet-wide organism with a form of intelligence completely alien to anything previously encountered. Her breakthrough technology, the Quantum Ecological Interface Protocol, QEIP, did something no previous exploration tool had managed. It didn't just collect data, it established a form of communication. The first truly meaningful transmission came in a burst of molecular patterns that would have been invisible to any previous scanning technology. It wasn't a message in any traditional sense. It was a complex series of environmental interactions that, when properly decoded, revealed something extraordinary. XR7 wasn't trying to kill explorers. It was testing them. Each previous expedition had been a probe, an attempt to understand potential external intelligences. The planet's defensive mechanisms were less about destruction and more about comprehensive assessment. It was learning, analyzing, preparing. Elena's modifications to the standard exploration protocols were revolutionary. Where other teams brought weapons and defensive technologies, she brought translation algorithms and adaptive communication matrices. Her suit wasn't just protective gear, it was a conversation starter. The consortium's primary research team watched in stunned silence as her preliminary reports came in. Dr. Yara Lin, the lead xenobiological analyst, could barely articulate what she was seeing. "She's not exploring the planet," Lin muttered, her voice a mixture of awe and terror. "She's negotiating with it." By the end of the first week, Elena had collected more meaningful data about XR7 than all previous 17 expeditions combined. Her initial hypothesis was becoming clear. This wasn't a mission of exploration. It was a first contact scenario of the most profound kind. The planet was waiting. And for the first time, someone was actually listening. The technological breakthrough wasn't about survival. It was about communication. And humanity had just begun to speak a language the galaxy had never heard before. The linguistic breakthrough came from an impossible place: chaos theory, quantum mechanics, and a half-remembered recipe for her grandmother's Brazilian molecular gastronomy. Elena realized that communication with XR7 wasn't about traditional language. It was about pattern recognition, adaptive response, and something far more nuanced than simple information exchange. The planet was a massive living computational system that processed information through environmental interactions. Her strategy was madness. Brilliant, terrifying madness. She began to respond to the planet's probes, not with scientific instruments, but with carefully constructed environmental interventions that mimicked complex communication protocols. Each movement, each sample collection, each minute adjustment of her exploration module became part of an intricate dialogue. The Galactic Consortium watched in horror and fascination. Her communication matrix drew from disciplines that seemed completely unrelated. Quantum entanglement theory merged with ecological systems modeling. Chaos theory intertwined with molecular biology. Machine learning algorithms danced with geological interaction models. Where previous expeditions saw XR7 as an enemy to be conquered or avoided, Elena saw a complex system waiting to be understood. Her approach was less scientific invasion and more elaborate dance, each movement a potential word, each environmental interaction a complex sentence. The first true breakthrough came unexpectedly. The microscopic bacterial colony, previously unseen in any spectral analysis, began to respond to her environmental modifications. It wasn't just adaptation. It was communication. The bacteria acted as a planetary neural network, transmitting information through molecular interactions that made electrical signals look primitive. Elena's suit became more than protective gear. It transformed into a living translation device, its adaptive materials creating a bridge between human intelligence and the planet's complex systems. They're not defending. She transmitted back to the consortium. They're communicating. The entire planet is one massive living computational system. Her grandmother's cooking became an unexpected key. The complex flavor interactions she'd learned as a child, how different molecular structures could create entirely new sensory experiences, translated directly into her approach to planetary communication. Each environmental probe became a carefully constructed sentence, each sample collection a grammatical structure. She was writing a conversation using the planet's own language of molecular interactions and environmental responses. The Krellnack's linguistic analysis team nearly short-circuited trying to understand her methodology. Their most advanced translation matrices couldn't comprehend what Alina was doing. She wasn't just collecting data. She was engaging in a dialogue that transcended traditional understanding of communication. 42 days into the mission, XR7 did something no one expected. It stopped trying to kill her. Instead, the planetary systems began to modify themselves. Toxic atmospheric regions began to stabilize. Extreme gravitational zones softened. The planet wasn't just listening. It was responding. Dr. Yara Lin, watching from the consortium's primary research station, could only whisper one phrase. "She's teaching the planet how to talk to us." The unexpected strategy wasn't about survival. It was about translation, about finding a common language in the most impossible of environments. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to communicate, to understand, to adapt. XR7 was about to learn that lesson firsthand. Transformation was not a moment. It was a cascading revelation. 67 days into the mission, XR7 stopped being a planet. It became a conversation. The Galactic Exploration Consortium's primary monitoring station fell into absolute silence as Alina's data streams revealed something beyond scientific comprehension. The planet was rewriting itself, not through violent geological shifts, but through carefully orchestrated molecular recalibrations that suggested something closer to conscious redesign than random environmental change. Her communication protocol, a hybrid system she dubbed the Rodriguez Resonance Matrix, had done the impossible. It wasn't just interpreting the planet's complex systems. It was engaging in a form of planetary dialogue that redefined the very concept of interspecies communication. "We've been wrong about everything," Alina transmitted, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and profound humility. XR7 wasn't a death world. It was a massive, planet-wide defensive and learning system, a computational organism that had been waiting for something it could actually communicate with. The previous 17 expeditions hadn't been destroyed. They'd been evaluated, tested, found wanting. Humanity, it seemed, was the first to pass the test. The planetary transformation began subtly. Toxic atmospheric regions began to stabilize. Extreme gravitational zones softened. Areas that had been considered molecularly impossible to survive now showed signs of potential habitability. But it wasn't simple terraforming. It was something far more complex, a collaborative environmental reconstruction. Dr. Yara Lin, analyzing the data streams, could barely articulate what she was witnessing. "She's not just exploring," Lin muttered. "She's negotiating a planetary treaty." Alina's methodology defied every known scientific protocol. She wasn't collecting samples. She was having a conversation, using environmental modifications as language, molecular interactions as grammar, planetary systems as a complex, living syntax. The Krellnack's neural analysts spent weeks trying to deconstruct her communication matrix. Their most advanced computational systems struggled to comprehend an approach that merged quantum mechanics, ecological systems theory, and what could only be described as intuitive creativity. Her suit was no longer just protective gear. It had become a living translation device, its adaptive materials creating a bridge between human intelligence and the planet's computational systems. Each environmental interaction was a carefully constructed linguistic exchange. 72 days in, XR7 did something unprecedented. It began to share its history, not through traditional communication, but through carefully constructed molecular data streams that revealed the planet's origin. It was an ancient defensive system, created by a long-extinct civilization as a testing ground for potential galactic interactions. a planetary-scale intelligence designed to evaluate potential first contact scenarios, and humanity had just become the first species to truly communicate. The Galactic Exploration Consortium watched in stunned silence as Elena's final transmission came through. It wasn't a report. It was an invitation. "We're not just exploring anymore," she said, her voice calm and clear. "We're making first contact, and the galaxy will never be the same." Total transformation wasn't about conquering an environment. It was about understanding it, about finding a common language in the most impossible of places. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to listen, to adapt, to understand. The final confrontation was nothing like anyone expected. 90 days into the mission, the Galactic Exploration Consortium assembled an emergency council. Representatives from 63 spacefaring civilizations gathered, their collective technological might dwarfed by the implications of Elena Rodriguez's mission to XR7. It wasn't a military victory. It wasn't even a scientific conquest. It was a complete reimagining of what first contact could mean. Elena stood before the holographic assembly, her environmental suit modified beyond recognition. No longer just protective gear, but a living interface that told the story of her journey. Behind her, the data streams from XR7 painted a narrative that shattered every previous understanding of planetary exploration. "We've been asking the wrong questions," she began, her voice calm and measured. "Every species that approached XR7 saw a hostile environment, a death world to be conquered or avoided. We saw a conversation waiting to happen." The Voroxian delegation's computational matrices struggled to process her presentation. Krelnak's neural analysts ran recursive analysis protocols, searching for some hidden complexity in her seemingly simple statement. Her mission data was a masterpiece of scientific audacity. XR7 wasn't just a planet. It was a massive, planet-wide computational system, a testing ground created by an ancient civilization to evaluate potential galactic interactions. 17 previous expeditions had been deemed failures, not because they were destroyed, but because they never attempted to communicate. Elena had done the impossible. She demonstrated how humanity's greatest strength wasn't technological superiority. It was adaptability. Communication. The ability to see patterns where others saw only chaos. The planetary defensive systems that had consumed entire exploration teams were now carefully mapped, not as weapons, but as a complex language. Each molecular interaction, each gravitational anomaly, each toxic atmospheric region was a carefully constructed linguistic structure. "This isn't just exploration," she explained. "This is translation." Her methodology combined disciplines that should have been incompatible. Quantum mechanics danced with ecological systems theory. Molecular biology intertwined with advanced computational linguistics. Machine learning algorithms created bridges between human understanding and planetary communication. The consortium's most advanced analysts could only watch in stunned silence. XR7 had begun to modify itself. Regions once considered uninhabitable now showed potential for sustainable ecosystem development. The planet wasn't just communicating, it was collaborating, offering insights into planetary formation, ancient galactic civilizations, and environmental adaptation that would revolutionize scientific understanding. Dr. Yora Lin, analyzing the final mission reports, found herself whispering a single phrase that would become legendary in scientific circles. "We didn't conquer a planet. We made a friend." The victory was comprehensive, but not in any traditional sense. 17 previous expeditions had seen XR7 as an enemy to be defeated. Elena Rodriguez had seen it as a conversation waiting to happen. Where others brought weapons and defensive technologies, she brought curiosity, adaptability, and an unprecedented willingness to listen. As the holographic presentation concluded, the representatives of 63 spacefaring civilizations understood a fundamental truth. Humanity's exploration of the galaxy would not be defined by conquest. It would be defined by communication. 1 year after the XR7 mission, The universe had changed. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a new kind of academic assembly, not a scientific conference, but a galactic symposium that redefined the very concept of exploration. Representatives from species that had never before shared a conversation now sat together, united by a fundamental shift in understanding. Her final mission report was more than documentation. It was a manifesto. "We are not conquerors," she began, her voice carrying the weight of a journey that had transformed an entire species' understanding of its place in the universe. "We are translators, bridges between the known and the unknown." The Rodriguez Protocol, as it was now officially named, had become the new standard for interstellar exploration. Where previous methodologies focused on survival and data collection, the new approach was about communication, adaptation, and mutual understanding. XR7 had become more than a planet. It was a living testament to the potential of first contact done differently. The planetary system now served as a research hub, a diplomatic center, and a symbol of what could be achieved when exploration was approached with curiosity instead of conquest. Her grandmother's lessons, those long-forgotten conversations about cooking, about understanding how different elements interact, about the poetry of molecular communication, had been the unexpected key to humanity's greatest scientific breakthrough. The Galactic Exploration Consortium had been completely restructured. The old guard, those who saw exploration as a matter of technological superiority, had been replaced by a new generation of researchers who understood that the universe was less about conquest and more about conversation. Dr. Yara Lin, now head of interstellar communication studies, summarized the transformation succinctly. "We used to ask how we could survive in hostile environments. Now we ask how we can understand them." Elena's mission had done more than explore a planet. It had rewritten the fundamental approach to interstellar interaction. Species that had been isolated for millennia now began to communicate, sharing knowledge, understanding, and a new perspective on galactic coexistence. The technological breakthroughs were stunning. The Rodriguez Resonance Matrix had become the foundation of a new field of study, planetary linguistics. Researchers could now approach previously uninhabitable worlds, not as challenges to be conquered, but as complex systems waiting to be understood. Her suit, now preserved in the Galactic Museum of Exploration, was more than a piece of equipment. It was a symbol of a new approach to understanding. Each molecular adapter, each quantum communication interface told a story of human potential. In universities across known space, a new generation of explorers studied her methodology. They learned that the most powerful tool of exploration was not advanced weaponry or superior technology, but the ability to listen, to adapt, to understand. Exploration is not about being the first, Elena would often tell her students. It's about being the most willing to learn. The 17 previous expeditions to XR7 were no longer seen as failures. They were now understood as necessary steps, a progression of understanding that culminated in humanity's breakthrough. As she looked out over the assembled representatives, beings from worlds she could never have imagined, Elena understood something profound. The mission to XR7 was never just about a planet. It was about reimagining what it meant to be explorers, to be human. The universe was waiting, and humanity was finally ready to have a conversation.